Okay, a little quick video just to help anybody else out who is going to be doing this job. This is, as you saw by the title, how to change the oil in a Morris Minor. Now specifically, this is a 1966 model. It's got the 1098 engine in it, and it's got the bog standard ribbed case 4-speed gearbox, because there was 3 different gearboxes in a Morris Minor and they have their own little differences. So specifically this is for this one. The different gearboxes have different oils and mostly similar locations, but once again, they are different. Things that you're going to need: a Morris Minor, obviously. You're going to need some sort of oil pan. I've just got a chicken tray, a funnel. You're going to want to have a pretty powerful jack and axle stands. Now specifically for axle stands, never work on a car when it's under a jack only. Always have axle stands. It's just to be safe, because this car weighs 3/4 of a ton and that falling on your head will kill you. Also, make sure before you're doing any work on jacking up the car, put the handbrake on and make sure it's chocked up on bricks. And particular piece of advice, not necessary, but try not to do this on your parents' house's block paving, because if you spill any oil, your mother or father will kill you. My mum knows I'm doing this. She's not happy about it. I don't have my tools at my flat. First thing you want to do is to get access to the gearbox filler plug. It's actually under here. It'll be under this little rubber plug. And you want to crack that off. So it's just been cracked off. Just to save you doing it when the actual car's on stands. It's a bit lower, a bit easier to get into. Make sure you've also got the correct oil. This particular gearbox uses 2050 engine oil. But earlier gearboxes use a different type of oil, so bear that in mind. Don't put modern oil in, it'll ruin it. Right, now we've got to jack the car up. So the first thing you want to do, obviously, is jack up the car once you've done everything else. Now, some people like to use the Morris Minor jacking points, which are hidden under there. Don't. Unless you are dead certain that your car is perfectly structurally sound, don't use those, because if there's any corrosion whatsoever, it could actually bend them and cause you problems. I personally like to jack at the front underneath the chassis legs, and that's where I'm going to put the axle stands. And at the rear, if you can jack it up underneath the differential and then put the axle stands on the rear axle. Morris Minor doesn't have a front axle, so put them on the chassis legs underneath the engine. They're the strong points. And welcome to the particularly crusty underside of my car. Don't worry about all of this, because it's actually structurally sound. There's a bit of surface rust, but it's going in for an undersealing in a week or two. This is where I've got the axle stands. They are just behind where the wheels are mounted. That's a good place to have them. Because the actual ground slopes on this driveway, that's why this wheel looks like it's touching, but it's free, and this wheel's a bit higher up. It's just the way it is. I should have parked, if I want to get the car up a bit further, I park it over, but I want to get underneath, so I've got a bit of space. So don't worry, it's fully jacked up and it's fully safe. Now the next thing you want to do, if I can get up, me back. Right, you want to give the car a good shove. It's not going to, it's just in case, it's just about holding on. You always want to be safe before working under a car. Like I said, they can fall on you, and they can and will kill you. So now we need to go underneath and start draining the oil. Something as well that you might want to do, just to make your life easier, is pull the top plug out. This is the top plug of the gearbox. This just means that there's not an air gap and it drains out quicker, because it's quite cold right now, so it's going to be quite thick, just to let you know. Yeah, so it's particularly oily under here, but that's a normal sign. Every Morris Minor is about as oily as can be, and there you go. Right, just to spot the drain plug, it's hard to see underneath all of this oil, but that's it right there. Just going to put a finger towards it. There you go. Now I'm going to go under here. Sorry about the light. It's not very good, I know. I'm going to go under here and just give this a good tweaking. And yeah, get that undone. But first off, put the pan underneath, or you'll get oil everywhere. Okay, sorry about the shaky handheld camera, but this might be a stiff bolt to undo. Oh no, and don't drop the spanner in your oil pan. Now the oil should start leaking out pretty quick, so be sure to not get drenched in it. Yeah, no, I'm not wearing gloves. I couldn't find my gloves. Right. Okay, here we go. Now, I bought this car without any real history of servicing, so... Ooh! That is black! That is horrific. It's all over my hands as well, down. Right. Now, obviously, let that drain out. Give it a good 5 minutes of draining before carrying on. Okay, so we've taken the plug out and it's been about 5 minutes. Went inside, had a coffee, lovely, feel a bit better. Now, you could leave this literally for hours and it'll keep dripping. So after about 5 minutes, there's only a bit of sludge in the bottom. I'm going to be changing the oil again in about 1,000 miles because it's just so horrible, this oil. I'll show you the oil pan in a minute, but I need to get the nut back in. Believe it or not, best nut for this is actually an 18mm. This is an Imperial carb, but because the socket has a slight taper, I found that actually the best one is an 18mm, and quite a few other people recommend that as well. Sounds daft, I know, but it works. So I'm going to put that in and tighten it up, and then I'll show you what the oil looks like that came out, because it's pretty grim. This is why you change your oil regularly, folks. That is disgustingly bad. That's really awful. There's also a lot, it's hard to see on camera, but there's actually a lot of like grit and filter in the bottom. This is just really horrible. I'm so glad that I changed the oil. This is why you change your gearbox oil regularly. Always follow the recommended maintenance guide on a classic car, because this is why. Yeah. Now, time to put the new oil in. Now, to put the oil in, you don't want to pour it straight because you're never going to get it in. You need to have some way of getting it out of there into the oil filler, which is obviously sunk down a bit. So I've got this improvised filler. It's actually just a bit of garden hose and a funnel, but it's perfectly clean. Make sure it's clean, make sure it's not damp. You don't want any moisture in there, you don't want any grit in there, because it's just going to ruin your gearbox. And I've also got a glass. Now, the only reason I'm using the glass is this is going to get smashed for pottery reasons by my mum, so I'm okay to use this as long as it's cleaned out. But use like a paper cup or something like that, something that can hold the oil, so you're not just trying to pour it straight from the rather heavy can. Now, time to top up the oil. Just wanted to show you, that's what proper engine oil should look like. So clearly that oil's been in there far too long. It's more green in texture. Now I've filled up this glass just with it, so, and it's actually pretty translucent. So now to fill up the actual car with this. Here we go. Okay, so here's my setup. The glass filled with oil, pour it into the top, which now, as you can see, is draining into the gearbox. Now, I only put in a bit of a time because the way to tell is when the actual oil starts coming out the filler down there, but because I've got a bit of hose jammed in it, it's going to be a bit more of guesswork. But usually if you've got something like a Zoom bottle or a proper filler, that's how you know, because it'll come out. That's kind of how you tell. So just keep filling up until it's full. Now that the gearbox is full of oil, as you can see, there's a bit of a drip over the lip of the gearbox right there. Now you just need to put the socket back, long extension, just make sure it's in, and then just kind of don't drop it on the floor. Now the last job to do is obviously clean up the mess you've made and safely dispose of your oil. Now digging a hole, filling it with gravel and pouring it away. Use a safe bottle, like a milk bottle, pour it in there and take it to your local tip for safe disposal. Anyway, that's pretty much everything. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed.